Hey everyone, Howard Pinsky here with a very quick thank you to my sponsor, Squarespace. If you're looking to create a website that's easy to use, customizable, and mobile friendly, you're going to want to check out squarespace.com. They've got great customer service, which is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, based in the US. They've won a ton of awards. For $8 a month, you get a custom domain name and the amazing services that Squarespace offers. And if you use the coupon code right there, you get 10% off for life. So what are you waiting for? Head over to squarespace.com and start designing. Hey everyone, Howard Pinsky here with another Photoshop and Lightroom tutorial. And in this video, I'm going to show you several methods on brightening up and getting rid of the yellow in someone's teeth. So here we are in Lightroom to start off, and there are two things you can do in Lightroom to help solve this problem, one of which is a lot better than the other. So I'm going to enter the Develop module by either clicking on Develop at the top or pressing the D key on the keyboard. Now in the first section, the basic adjustments, I'm not going to touch because this image is pretty nicely exposed, but of course in your images, if you do need to tweak the basic adjustments, feel free to do so. I'm going to scroll down to the HSL section, which stands for Hue, Saturation, and Luminance, and this gives us control over all the different colors and shades in the image. In this panel, we have the different colors, which we could use the sliders to control. But you also have at the top left corner, the Targeted Adjustment tool, which is a much better choice in my opinion. So when you click on this, you're able to move your mouse over top of the color you want to adjust, in this case yellow, and simply click and then drag down, and that will suck that yellow out of the image because I'm decreasing the saturation. Of course, if you want to increase it, you can drag it the other way, but I'm going to pull it down just like this a little bit. Now you're noticing when I'm doing that, the yellow, if I turn this off and then turn it back on, the yellow in the teeth is definitely decreasing. But you're also noticing that the reds in the lips, or the pinks in the lips, and also the peach in the skin is also decreasing. So in that case, what you can do, you can hover over top of the lips so it'll target the reds and then bring that up a little bit to bring that back. Now if I turn it off and then back on again, you can definitely see that the lips are a little bit better, but the skin was also affected. And you can keep tweaking this until it looks great. I can hop over to the Luminance tab, grab the Target Adjustment tool one more time, and brighten up the teeth just like that. So again, I'm going to turn this off and then back on. So it definitely made a difference and it looks a little bit better. But what if you don't want to affect everything else other than the teeth? I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to scroll back up to the top of the Adjustments panel, and this time I'm going to grab my adjustment brush, which is this icon right over here. And this will allow us to paint in exactly where we want to adjust. So you'll notice if I start painting here, you can see the area that's going to be adjusted, and that's because I have a color set over here at the bottom of the adjustment brush panel. So I'm going to just paint over top of this. Obviously, you're not going to keep your teeth green, but just to show you how this works, it's much more specific than the last method. Of course, you obviously don't want it green, so I'm going to click on the green box and change this to transparent by dragging it all the way to the bottom left. I'm going to close out the Select a Color window. Now, obviously, you're noticing that the saturation is way down. I'm going to double click on the saturation slider to reset it back to 0. And in this case, what you could do is just adjust the temperature, which right now is a little bit yellow. So if I drag it to the left, it's going to take that yellow out of the teeth. Now if I continue painting, I can continue removing the yellow from the teeth, just like this. And I can continue on the image as much as I want. And you're noticing it's really not affecting any of the other colors like the reds or the peaches in the skin because I'm really not painting over top of it. And the little red that I am painting over top of in the gums and the lips, you're not really noticing a difference. So that's not too bad. So now if I turn this off with this icon at the bottom left and then back on, you're noticing only the teeth are being affected. And of course you have all these other adjustments. So I can take the highlights, increase that a little bit if I want to, or I can adjust the exposure instead, just like that. Now that's probably a little bit too overdone, but you can tweak it until you find a nice sweet spot. And again, if I turn it off and then back on, you definitely have much nicer teeth. So that's how you can do it in Lightroom. But if you wanted a little bit more control, you can definitely do this edit in Photoshop. So here we are in Photoshop, and the nice thing about editing in Photoshop is that you have access to adjustment layers. So at the bottom of your layers panel, you can click on the adjustment layer icon, and you can choose all these different adjustment layers. For this example, I'm going to choose selective color, which allows me to go through my colors and adjust the cyans, the magenta, the yellow, and the black of each and every color. So I can select yellow, And then in this panel, I can drag the yellow slider to the left, which will get rid of the yellow in the image. And you may not be able to see that, but if I turn selective color off and then back on, you may be able to see that the yellow in the teeth has definitely decreased. And then I can switch over to the whites and do the exact same thing. Grab the yellow slider and drag it to the left, which again decreases the yellow in the teeth. Again, I'm going to turn selective color off and then back on. But you're noticing the same problem that arose in the first example when we were in Lightroom, where even though the teeth are being affected, everything else is changing as well. But because we're in Photoshop and because we're using an adjustment layer, we also have access to layer masks, which allows us to choose exactly what we want affected, kind of like the adjustment brush in Lightroom. So in the layers panel, we have our layer mask right over here. And there are a few ways to work with this. You can either grab a black brush, shortcut key B, and then change the brush over here on the left. I'm going to choose a black brush. And then if I right click, I can set my size, let's say somewhere around, this is a pretty big document, somewhere around 432, sure, and the hardness I want to set to 0. And when I paint black on this document, it's going to remove the adjustment from everywhere I'm painting on top of, just like this. And because I'm using a Wacom stylus, it's also detecting my pressure sensitivity. So if there are some areas in the photo that I want a little bit less affected, I can just press a little bit softer on my stylus and I can do just that. So once again, I'm going to turn off the selective color adjustment, turn it back on, and you're noticing now only the teeth are being affected. The lips are fine, the skin is fine, we only have the teeth. Now the second way you can do things is pretty much do the opposite. You can paint in white where you'd like the effect to take place. And if that's the route you want to take your layer mask and make it completely black. So right now my foreground color is set to black. I'm going to hold down my Option key on the Mac, Alt key on Windows, and press Delete, which will fill the whole layer mask with black. Now at this point, you want to switch to a white brush. I'm going to press the D key on my keyboard to set the default brushes. I'm going to decrease the size of my brush a little bit by pressing the left square bracket key and simply brush over top of the teeth. And that will paint in my selective color adjustment layer only on the areas that I'm painting on top of, in this case, the teeth. And you're noticing as I'm doing that, the teeth are becoming less yellow and a little bit more bright. And I can continue down here just like that, make a brush stroke right across there, and we now have much brighter teeth. Turn off the selective color adjustment layer, and then back on. Now again, because we're using adjustment layers, what I can do is add another one. I'm going to add a brightness and contrast adjustment layer, brighten it up just a little bit, and then I can clip it using this icon right here, which will clip it to the previous adjustment layer so it only affects the teeth as well. If I turn that off and then back on, you'll notice the teeth are now nice and bright. And that will just about complete it. I showed you 2 methods in Lightroom and 1 method on Photoshop on how to remove the yellow stains and brighten up your teeth in Photoshop and Lightroom. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time for another Photoshop or Lightroom tutorial. Take care.